So
Well, yeah. So,
yeah,
I mean, like I said, I'm 50-50 on it right now. I'm like, yes, no, you know.
so let me know what you decide.
Okay.
And Judd, March 20th is the President's Dinner for the club, Republican Club. So
March 20th?
yeah, you're invited.
Welcome, glad to have you, because you haven't known.
I'll text you a link where you can go. Get
Yeah. So what time do you guys need me to stop?
Like by 12:55.
12:59?
Yes. But you might get, you don't have a lot of announcements today, so you might get started early. So don't feel like you have to go until 12. When I stand up, it's pretty much, and we need to, when I come start looking at you like, hello, but yeah. Well, no, I mean, you might have lots of questions. We appreciate you coming in so quickly.
I love you.
Yeah.
And y'all have my favorite place.
It's China, right? Tina. Okay. I'm glad I asked.
No.
Okay. I'll just introduce you. Okay. He's a long time friend of us. Yeah. Okay.
Glad to have you here today.
Thanks, Beth. Thank you so much. You can advance from the down arrow. Just want to go back. That's good. Thank you so much. Where do I need to stand? Stay in your frame.
Don't worry about it. I mean, I assume you're going to just stay up in this area because of the presentation. But I'll rotate the camera. Like the other day, we had somebody speak over here, and I'll just rotate the camera. So. We don't have a ton of people who watch online, but we've got 3 people right now. So. We started doing that for the past 2 years. I love their cookies. There was the year Jeff was president, we had our board meetings at his little office, and he would always bring cookies. And we had one board meeting where he had like probably a tray of 24 cookies, but 3 people took cookies, and I took the tray. But it was the day of the point in time count that they do for homeless, so I went and met some of my path people and gave them some cookies before I took them home.
What's the count of homeless?
I don't know that. Yeah, I'm not involved in that part of it, so I really don't know. I know that they were worried that they weren't going to get a true count this year because the weather was so nice, and it turned out to be just gorgeous. I remember that much.
I'll tell them about the number one priority is getting that courthouse. It's the number one priority. I don't think he's going to say so.
I'm not going to say that. But
Well,
I'm going
because
to
you
say,
put it on hold for a while.
yeah,
Yeah.
I'm going to show you the video. I'd say number one priority is courthouse, just land.
Yeah, there you go. Bridget, what's the lady, the architect? Randy.
Ziegler.
I met with her at the food bank. We're working on this strategy. Spending money. Telling her, I said, Mark was proud when he ran this. This man had all these leadership points. Up, came up, courthouse, and all your renderings and whatever. I said, well, it kind of reminded me of Washington, D.C., where the tallest building got to be there in the Capitol.
Really fun back to her. And she's like the boss.
She's fabulous. She's great. Look forward to it, my friend.
By the way, we appreciate your work neighbors coming to Capitol.
Well, I'd rather do that than hear that sound. I appreciate it. Talk to Luke, talk to her. Appreciate it.
Who's singing it?
National. Time to wait.
Will you pray with me? Heavenly Father, we pause on this gorgeous winter day, mindful of all the beauty that you have bestowed on this world, and that we thank you for the sun that warms us, and the rains that renew us, and even the snow that reminds us how fortunate we are to live in Texas. We ask that you bless this food to the nourishment of our bodies, and this Rotary Club to the service to this community and to all the world. We ask that you give wisdom to our national leaders, patience and understanding to those seeking to find peaceful solutions to conflict around the world, and protect those that protect us both home and abroad. We ask all these things each in our own way. Amen.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. See by the dawn's early light, was a proudly revealed, and the twilight slides free, used by stripes and bright stars, through the perilous stars, all the red of the wars, there's a heavenly stream, and the rockets and flare, of the mercy they prove the night that our flag was still there. Oh, save us as our slave, Thank you. Please be seated. Beth, do we have any visitors today?
We do not have any visitors today, with the exception of our speaker.
Okay.
So with that, I would challenge you we're at the Rotary. You look around here somewhere, you know, the world, you know, it's a little bit more, we'd love to have guests. I do need to make a little clarification that in the bulletin, yes, this is my 19th anniversary from when I was first inducted as a Rotarian, although I did have about a 6-year hiatus in between. So I just felt like I need to be real crystal clear on that. I had to take a little break in between, but yes.
I texted her and said, well, are you two when you joined Rotary 19 years ago? Close. Can you give, is Bill Coates here yet? Can you give that to Bill Coates for our sports moment, please?
50 years ago today, I kind of have to be an old guy like Jim Evans and me to remember this. One of the biggest sports events in my life took place at Madison Square Garden in New York. It was Muhammad Ali and Joe Frazier. Now, to put that in perspective, you hear about the Super Bowl build-ups and the hype leading up to the Super Bowl. That's nothing compared to what the Ali Frazier build-up for the first fight was. So finally, these two iconic fighters get into the ring at Madison Square Garden, and 300 million people were supposedly watching, mostly paid $20 maybe or whatever the price was at the time. Entirely, you had to go to the Tiger Theater to see it at the movie. And so they fought. The fight went 15 rounds, and Joe Frazier wearing green trunks, who was kind of called an Uncle Tom. He was a kind of a clash of really different mindsets at the time. Muhammad Ali was, you know, the Cassius Clay, who turned Muslim, who opposed the Vietnam War, but later had to give up his heavyweight championship because of his stance against Vietnam. That happened actually before the Ali Frazier fight. So they finally meet, and the fight went 15 rounds, and Frazier won on a unanimous decision. They would fight 2 more times. They had 3 really, really good fights, but that first one in my lifetime of the events that I can remember might be the biggest sports event as far as build-up that I've ever seen. That happened 50 years ago today. A year ago this week, I was at Ranger Spring Training in Surprise, Arizona, when the world shut down. I was covering the Rangers, and I've done it for many years. Not going this year, because there's really no reason for me to go. You can't get within 50 feet of these guys, okay? You just don't do face-to-face interviews right now. But we're in Surprise, Arizona, on Monday night, beginning of, we've been doing our radio shows for the Ranger Spring Training, and they shut the clubhouse down. I'm going, well, that's interesting. By Wednesday, Rudy Gobert of Utah Jazz had tested positive for COVID. The NBA shut down, and everything shut down. That happened a year ago this week. But now, with the new non-mask mandate, it's an interesting dichotomy. A year later, the Rangers are back open their season here in less than a month. And it's kind of interesting to see what these ball clubs do, especially in Texas, the Astros and the Rangers, just because they can fill it up, I guess, since businesses are now being allowed to go 100%. The question is, should they? And so it'll be interesting to see how the Rangers handle this. My guess is that they'll start at about 25% and maybe build up over the course of the season. But that all starts Wednesday, and I'm going to be very interested to see what the Rangers do with fans this year. Thanks a lot.
Bill, will you give that to Howard Patterson? Howard, if you want to make
that, you need you?
Howard.
Howard, no, I'm not giving it to him.
And as Bill mentioned, there has been an update to the mask mandate, as well as, you can come on up more, as well as the occupancy requirements. That's going to be lifted this Wednesday. Sometime where Rotary Board of Directors did get together via email, and we just talked about a few things. We are not going to enforce any sort of mask mandates for our meetings, but we just do kind of suggest that if you need to, please remember to follow the CDC guidelines in regards to social distancing, mask mandates, etc. We are going to continue doing box lunches for a little bit longer. We know that our catered meals were a lot more filling and had more options, but we feel like that's one way that we can allow for a little bit more of social distancing. Did I leave anything out of what we talked about? I don't think so. But hopefully, as Beth mentioned, and I put in an email yesterday, as we're turning the corner and things are getting back to normal, hopefully we'll be able to get more projects, social activities, as well as service projects going on so that our club can be more engaged. So, Johnny's not here. Are you? Can you see if he's in the screen? Nathaniel, can you see it? Howard's
Over here. There you go, he's coming over. Okay.
Oh,
Yeah, you're on YouTube.
no.
Yeah, YouTube.
YouTube, sorry.
So, Johnny's not here, he was running late, so I'm gonna do the number spotlight today. Does anyone remember the thing he did last week, counting the letters? I know one, huh?
4.
Okay, what was that, was family? Family, okay, so, family, tell us about your family.
Which one you want first? Family. Which one you want first?
Family.
Family, 3 children and a wife.
There you go.
Any grandchildren?
Yes, 3 grandchildren. Two girls, oldest are teachers, and my son works for Striker Orthopedics.
And are you from Tyler, or did you move?
From the Boston area, grew up in Westbrook, Massachusetts, about 30 miles from Boston. Not too far from Fenway. My claim to fame in Fenway is I got up once to the bathroom and the ball hit my seat. Never did get that.
And how long have you been in Tyler?
Been in Tyler 20 years this coming summer. Came here in, whatever that was, 20 years ago, to start the athletic program at UT Tyler.
And that segues into Rotary, which I think is occupation. So tell us a little bit about what you do at UT Tyler.
At UT Tyler, I'm the athletic director. Well, since I've been there, the Vice President of Student Affairs, Vice President of Government Relations, Vice President of Auxiliary Services, and Vice President for Student Success.
So how did you get into the athletic side of it? What,
My role model in high school was my coach. The doctor was a grumpy old guy that hurt you every time you went in there, the dentist wasn't any better. So I role model with my coaches in high school, and they had gone to Springfield College, which is in Massachusetts, which is also the birthplace of basketball and volleyball, and I decided I wanted to be a teacher coach. That's what I did.
and I think the R was like recreation or hobbies.
Well, that changed over the years with age. I used to enjoy running and cycling a lot, but I don't do that anymore since I've had 6 surgeries since moving to Tyler. 3 artificial joints and the back fusions and carpal tunnel. But playing with the grandkids and watching our, I don't know, it's part of my job, but watching our student athletes compete. I got to go to Las Vegas this past weekend and watch our men's golf team. And there is no such thing as social distancing on an airplane. Every plane I was on was full. The team's plane was full, and the parents' planes were full. So all of the flights right now are just packed.
And then the last one, what motivates you?
Watching our student athletes be successful, that's a lot of fun. This past, we've been going through a D3 to Division II transition. What that means is Division III in the NCAA is a non-scholarship division. They're student athletes first. So students first and athletes second. When you transition to Division II, we're still trying to keep that model of students first and athletes second. And so far, we've been able to do that. We actually led all 18 schools this year with our department GPA, which doesn't surprise me, although a third of our schools are private schools. We still have good GPAs. But what was the question there?
Just what motivates you?
So that's right. Yeah, watching our student athletes grow, watching them come in as freshmen, kind of went behind the years, and then as they mature. Spending time this past weekend with 3 of our seniors on the golf team and how they've changed over the years, playing out their careers and one's getting ready to go there. And it's fun watching the coaches mature as well, because I've hired everybody in that department now. We've gone from the department staff of 3 people when I got here to over 37 full-time people. And it's fun watching them grow, and some of them moved on to bigger and better things, but a lot of them just stay there because they love Tyler and they love UT Tyler.
And I'm going to throw in one more question. Rotary, what brought you to Rotary?
Jesse Costa, I think, is the one who brought me to Rotary. And what's kept me here is the quality of the people that are in this room, the amount of time that they dedicate for our community. It helped me have some passion to get involved with the Chamber of Commerce as well, and to be a part of that growth. It's a great city. It's great. I'm not telling you anything. It's a good place to be.
Thank you, Howard. Appreciate it. I see that Johnny's stepping towards the end, but I did your form. I hope I did okay. I know you missed those of it. Speaking of accomplishments in Rotary, as Beth mentioned in our bulletin, I highlighted 3 individuals. Jim Eccles, who's here, starts his 39th year with Rotary. As well as Ron Jones And then as Beth said, she's 19 years. And my understanding is that they count from when you first joined, because I think, John, when we recognized you, that's what you said as well, is that you may leave for a couple of years and come back, but it still counts towards your Rotary years of service. Tom Seal, have we sold out of our tremendous yet?
Yes, 5 spots left. 5 spots.
All right, come on, five. I'll take one more. So we got 4 spots on it. So see, Tom, because when are we drawing for the names?
I think they get the teams, whoever the teams in that bill, we're going to do it Sunday.
Sunday. So
So, the first game is next Thursday, a week from Thursday night. Friday. So we announced this next Sunday, so we'll have Rotary next week. We'll have one more week to sell those 4 tickets.
okay. Perfect.
Put all those names after they're announced on Sunday.
Thank you, Tom. And if you have not already done so, please see Tom Seal to pay your dues. Beth, spaghetti supper. I know you said you wanted to make a quick announcement about that.
So I'll be super short, quick announcement. We're making some progress to getting a design around what spaghetti supper is going to look like. It's super tough this year because we're serving. We're going to do something completely different rather than just serving meals to people who bought tickets. We're going to serve meals to people who can't afford to buy tickets. That need our help. And we're going to help out some agencies and take that budget item away from them for their Meals on Wheels, Highway Aid Mission, Salvation Army, PATH, and Tyler Street, which is a new one. So if you look at May 20th on your calendar, take that day off. Because we're going to start really early, then everyone's going to need a nap. So,
Tom, go ahead. Not 4 o'clock in the morning.
3.
3, not 3 o'clock in the morning.
So we will need to be starting early, so we'll be.
You can be there at 3 o'clock in the morning.
She just said we're gonna have to start early.
But that's too early.
However early Brad can get us.
So anyway, I'll put May 20th, we're going to take that day off, or plans to commit that day, the school will take off, hands on deck, and then that's really good. And we do have some people who still are not going to feel comfortable being in person, so those are going to take people time to make phone calls and write thank you notes, and there is a job for everyone. So, yes, sir.
Give us loud and clear that date one more time.
May 20th. Mark your calendars for May 20th. Take the day off if you can, because we're going to need help all day long. It's going to be entirely different than last year, or 2 years ago. It's going to be really different than last year because we didn't have it last year. You might have seen that we had some information last week and in this week's bulletin about the 4-way speech contest. We were going to do that next week at our meeting. We had decided to wait to do that. We were kind of rushing to get it in, and we decided we wanted to take our time and work with the schools and get our Rotary name into the 3 schools. So I think May 10th is the date that we talked about, so we'll probably have the 4-way speech contest on May 10th. Are there any other announcements, anything I forgot to cover before I turn over the program to our guest speaker? Seeing none, he asked me not to read his bio because he says everybody in here knows him. He's a great friend to South Iowa Rotary, Smith County Judge, Nathaniel Moran.
Thank you, Diane. Am I on the mic correctly? All right, can you hear me all right? Bill, if you can't hear me at some point, just give me a sign back there. It's a pleasure to be with you. I love coming and talking to the South Iowa Rotary. This is one of my favorite groups to talk to because you guys have such great questions. So I've got a fairly long presentation. Some of you may have seen parts of this before, but I've got some good stuff, especially at the end that I want to get to. So I'm going to skip over some of the slides today. But before I get to that, I actually want to start out with questions. It's been a long time since many of you have had the opportunity to just talk face to face with some of your public officials. So let me just ask, are there any burning questions about the last 12 months that you want to talk about? Yes, sir.
Is the old Carlton Hotel still under contract?
The question is the old Carlton Hotel still under contract? We, the county, sold Carlton about 2 years ago, 2.5 years ago. So we have nothing to do with that now anymore. It was, I know, under contract from the buyer that bought it from us to another buyer.
That's the one I was talking.
That is no longer under contract. Yep, that deal fell through. So as far as I know, there is not a current secondary buyer from the buyer that bought it from us.
All right, thanks.
Colleen,
Are we ready to relaunch the courthouse initiative?
are we ready to relaunch the courthouse initiative? I'm going to show you that today, and I will talk to you about that and let you know where we are from a status point. From Commissioner's Court about what we decided to do. We had a big workshop about this about 2 weeks ago, and so I'll let you know exactly how we're going to move forward with that here in just a minute. So any other questions? Mayor?
What do you think about the governor just in the mask?
You had to ask. Listen, we got to talk about how mayors and county judges get along. No tough questions, not public. The mayor asked me what I think about the governor's mandate, and it isn't just a highly politically charged both comment, question, and decision, in my opinion. I mean, a lot of you guys know last year, after about the first, I'm going to tell you this, after about the first 8 weeks of shock, when communities and politicians and government officials started getting their feet set on COVID, the first 8 weeks were really non-political. Everybody really tried to do what they thought was best, but I can tell you after 8 weeks, everything got political. And then every decision that was made at the state level, and a lot of decisions that were made across the state and across the nation, really were driven by politics. And that's just really the truth of it. And that's unfortunate because here locally, actually, we tried not to do that. And we had a very good joint emergency operations center. Mayor Warren has come in at the tail end of that, but we're actually still meeting as a joint emergency operations center, the city of Tyler and Smith County. And when we started out doing that last year, it was like the second day of COVID. Me and Mayor Hines sat down with Ed Broussard. We said, you know what, we can't do this separately. We've got to do this together. And that was one of our, I think, crowning achievements here in this community was at least the city and the county got on the same page, and we worked together through that process and tried not to let the political influences, the political voices drive our decision making, but we really tried to make good, reasoned decisions. You know, there's a reasonable zone of difference where people can make different decisions based on the same set of facts. And throughout all this time period, me and my wife didn't agree on everything. Me and my brothers didn't agree on everything, but we were reasonable. And likewise, I'm sure if any of you were in a position of authority over an organization, you saw immediately that as soon as you made a decision, 50% of the people liked it and 50% of the people hated it. No matter what level, your family, your church, your business, no matter what it was. So at the end of the day, really you had to say, well, you know what, I think I'm just going to make the best decision I can and do the best that I can for this community, and then the chips are just going to fall where they may. So, you know, that's about as much as awesome comment about the governor's decision this last week. But here locally, I can tell you, we really tried to do the best we could based on good information and taking in what we understood the values of this community to be and find a good balance between life and liberty. And you know, those are really the two biggest things that come out of the Constitution. That's the reason for the Constitution, right? Preservation of life and liberty. I don't think any of us really foresaw that we would be in an emergency for a year where those two seemingly were in conflict or in tension with one another. And what we're trying to do is find that reasonable position where you are preserving as much life as possible while also preserving liberty, knowing that you're not going to preserve both in totality. You can't. There's just no way government's going to be able to do that, no matter what they do. So I hope that's an answer to your questions. Kind of a general overview of COVID this last year, which I had hoped to avoid in my presentation today. But thanks, Mayor. I'll be sure to return the favor at some point. All right, so let's go through some of these slides here. There we go. I want to talk to you a little bit about just how financial information, finances work at the county level. And the reason being is really in the context of this last year, look at this pie. About 62% of the county's budget comes from property taxes. And the reason I bring this up is informationally, you need to know there's a big difference between the county and the city in a lot of different ways. The mayor will tell you that about 40% of the city's revenue comes from sales tax. So what do you think that means in a budgeting standpoint? And I said this before COVID. It means the city actually has a really tough time or a tougher time figuring out what their revenues are going to be in the next year because sales taxes can go up and down pretty quick. Property taxes here in East Texas stay pretty stable, but city sales taxes can go up and down. Nobody would have thought that we would have a whole month of a shutdown when they were budgeting 13 or 14 months before for that time period. So it makes it a little bit more difficult on the city when they get revenue numbers in and trying to budget for those. So give them a little bit of grace as they go through that process. Where does our money go out there? For the county, you can see on this chart, there's some big pies down in the bottom left here. Judicial, which is 13.5, law enforcement 13.4, corrections 17.3, and juvenile 4.5. If you add all those up together, it's about 50% of what we spend our money on, and all of that is what I like to call the law and order bucket. That's the Angie Harmon bucket. Anybody catch that? Okay, we got at least one that caught that reference. Angie Harmon from Law and Order. All right, so that's the law and order bucket right there, back to the 90s. That's really what we do as a county. We are the primary instrument for law and order in the county, whether or not be the sheriff's office, the constables, the JPs, the district courts, the county courts of law, the constitutional county court, which is my court. Whatever it is, law and order, if it happens in this county, it happens to us unless we're talking about a parking ticket or a traffic ticket through city municipal court. So when people ask, well, what's the benefit of me? I live in the city. What's the benefit of me to have county taxes applied to me? There's a big reason right there. Because it protects your property values by having a law and order system that's all going to go through our county government. But the structure of county government is much different than the city. How many of you have seen this before? I've showed this before to a few folks. I know the mayor has, and Jeff saw this last week. This is one of the big things I want you to take away about the difference between a city and a county. The city is the pyramid on the left. And the reason why is represented by that picture there is because cities have this wonderful accountability structure where everybody is accountable up the chain to some other person, and it goes all the way up to the city manager. That city manager takes a general policy direction from the city council. But in essence, when you talk about the organizational structure, who can hire and fire certain people, who can dictate policies to certain people, it's the city manager at the top of that pyramid. And ultimately, everybody reports up to him, with the exception of probably the city lawyer. And that person also is probably a little bit quasi under control of the city council. But it's a pretty nice structure. Same way it works with the school district. Superintendent's in charge, Dr. Crawford's at the top. His deputies report to him, the principals report to them. It all flows up. But let me give you an example of how county government works. Look at the school districts. What if I said to you, okay, now for the school districts, the way we're going to run the school district is every principal is going to be elected independently. Every deputy superintendent is going to be elected independently. And none of them have to listen to the others.
Wow.
Now, how do you think that organizational structure is going to feed into their success? It makes it very difficult. Because what you got then is you got more middle school principals saying to the superintendent, well, we appreciate your vision for the school district, but we're actually going to run our school the way we want to run our school. And then Clarkson Elementary is going to say, well, even though we feed up to more middle school, well, you know what, we want to do things different than more middle school. So we're going to adopt a different curriculum. Now you got what I feel like sometimes. I'm in the front of the bus trying to drive the county bus, and I got 27 people behind me, all with steering wheels, trying to drive in a different direction. And that's how it is in the county. You have 28 elected officials. So look at the right, the picture on the right is the Parthenon. And I like this representation because each column is a separately elected official. Each column is not accountable to and does not report to another person, except for those that elected that person. That's it. So nobody reports to me. I don't take attendance when they're there and when they're not there, and the sheriff doesn't report to me, and the constables don't report to the sheriff. There's no chain of command like you would see in a city or a school structure. It's very different. And it's very difficult to get things done. Why? Because really my job now becomes building consensus, collaboration, communicating with 27 other individuals who all have very reasoned opinions about the way things should operate. And when you talk with other reasoned people about that, well, we have just differences of opinion, but you got to somehow get everybody moving in the same direction. So that's a lot of what I do as a county judge. There's all those 28 separately elected officials in Smith County. And we do work together very well. I'll tell you, the organization of County of Smith is running well. It is running very well compared to decades and years past. What do I do? These are some of the hats that I wear. In case you don't know, I want you to know the things that I try to do for you. And I'll tell you, I love being the county judge. Even after this last year, which was the absolute worst year imaginable for having to deal with situations that were unexpected, I still love every minute of it. I really do. But I'm a constitutional county court judge, so I actually have a gavel and road, and I oversee guardianship, mental health, and probate in the county. I'm also the county budget officer, so I put together the budget every year, about $110 million, present it to Commissioners Court, which is like the city council of the county, and we vote on that budget. And then I'm the presiding officer of that Commissioners Court every week, kind of like the mayor is for the city. But what is different between the county and the city is I try to wear Don Warren's hat, but I also try to wear Ed Broussard's hat. So I'm also the chief administrative officer of the county and run the day-to-day functions of the county. So that's a little bit about what I do. Now the hat up here, that the first couple of years when I made this presentation, I had this slide up here, and I thought, well, this doesn't really come into play very often, is that hat that says Head of Emergency Management. And it really didn't come into play very often for the first couple of years. Guess which hat I've been wearing all year last year? Is that one. And even a couple of weeks ago, when we had that winter weather event, it was like reliving the first week of COVID all over again, because so many emergencies were happening so quickly, and information was changing so quickly. You had to prioritize and try to meet those needs, getting water to people that need water, diesel fuel to get generators continuing to go for nursing homes and for the Carter Blood Center, and for all kinds of folks that really needed life preservation or property preservation during that week, and have to do that very quickly was an interesting task. And then I'm the chair of the juvenile board. I'm also the chair of the elections commission, which we just hired a new elections administrator, and I'm looking forward to her tenure here in Smith County as well. The roles of the commissioners court you probably know, and I'm going to go through this quick because I really want to get to the courthouse, because I want to show you a lot of stuff about the courthouse today. And Diane, let me know when it's 12:45, because I'm a little heads up on that. I don't want to get too far behind. They do effectively what the city council does: set policies. We call elections. We administer facilities. We make sure roads and bridges get built. All that kind of good stuff. You guys know all that. We approve the contracts. An interesting thing, though, that I was telling leadership Tyler this last week about is, we set policies. Like, we can set a bunch of HR policies, but you go back to that Parthenon columns here and there. Well, we can set policies only for that little subset of departments under us, and then we can recommend those policies to other elected officials. But all those other elected officials actually have the independent ability to say, thanks, no thanks, we're going to do our own policies. So we can't even set a number of policies for all those other elected officials, which means about 600 or so employees of the county of the 850 do not come under our policy control. How many people do you think in the county of the 850 employees I can actually independently hire or fire on matter? Diane's close. She said 0. It's 3. That's it. There's 3 people in the county that are only accountable to me. The rest are either accountable to the body of the commissioners board, or the majority are actually beholden to their particular elected official in their column. There's those department heads. We're going to skip over that. I want to talk about our current challenges and current projects that we're engaged in, because I want you to know what we're up to the next couple of years. And here's the punchline, going back to Ms. Colby's question about the courthouse. We started the courthouse project in 2019 because when we looked at 2020, we knew that as a community, we thought that as a community, in 2020, we would have the time to dedicate to interfacing with the community and talking to them about the courthouse. And we knew that that was a point in time when nothing else would be needed to be voted on. No other bond issue would be before the community. We could solely focus on that. We could take our time with that. 2020, of course, dissipated. April 9th last year, we had the chamber event scheduled where we had about 500 RSVPs, and we were going to present, here's the courthouse plans, and then say, we're calling the November bond election. And then, of course, 2 or 3 weeks before that, the COVID hit, and then that went away, and a month later we said, we just have to put it on pause. And we did put it on pause, and then about 2 weeks ago, I came back to the commissioners and said, we still have to put it on pause, and here's why. Because See this project up here on the top, Road Bridge Bond, Phase 2, potential November election? It's probably going to be another bond election coming up for Phase 2 of our Road Bridge plan. And this is, I think, very important for elected officials, especially here in Smith County, when the election's very, very informed. 4 years ago, I came forward to the community and said, look, we have a 6-year bond road bridge program. Give us the money to do years 1, 2, and 3. And when we're done, then you can evaluate whether or not we did a good job or not. And then we're going to ask you for the money for years 4, 5, and 6, because we really need to get the roads up to snuff. It's worked out great. In the first year of that program, we redid 10 times the amount of roads, or road miles, that had been done in any previous year. And in fact, we did as much that first year of that road program as what had been done in the 10 years prior combined. And I think that's pretty significant, because when you talk about what else besides law and order the county should be doing, it's roads and bridges. It has to be infrastructure. We have to take care of our infrastructure because that breeds economic growth. And so I'm a big believer in making sure that our road infrastructure is up to snuff, not only through the bond program to get it up where it should be, but also over that time period, pushing up the amount of money coming from the general fund every year to roads and bridges, so that when we're done with the bond program, we won't actually have to come back in years in the future and say, can you give us another bond? This bond program is to get us up to where we should have been taking care of things the last 40 years, and we haven't. But then when we get it up there, we don't want to say, well, we're still not going to be allocating enough money every year to take care of our roads. No, we have to get there. And we've done that. We've bumped it up from 2.9 pennies per year to 3.5 pennies per year over the past couple of years, dedicated to road and bridges. And I guarantee you we're going to get it to 5 pennies before this is all said and done, within our existing tax rate, based on the growth. So that out of our tax rate, we can save 5 pennies a year going to roads and bridges. And if that happens, then you won't have to vote on another road bridge bond down the road. Unless there's some like huge $200 million project that somebody wants to do. But that's, I mean, just taking care of the roads and bridges that we have, which are in the top 10 in the state, number of road miles we have in Smith County. We've got a lot of roads and bridges in Smith County. So that is why this year we're not going to be moving forward with the courthouse. Because 4 years ago, I promised this community roads and bridges would be our priority. In the interim, we were hoping to get that courthouse done, but we're going to be done with year 3 this year. We have to keep our promise. We have to keep our promise to the community and say, okay, we're going to stick with roads and bridges. And when we get that next bond passed in November, hopefully with Phase 2, then we can start looking at when's a good time to come back to the community with the courthouse. But we got to keep our promises. And if you guys want to talk more about that, we can. I'll be glad to. We did buy in cash a new facility for roads and bridges. It's the old Tyler Packing facility out there in Berwyn and the East Loop. We're going to redo that in cash and make that our new road and bridge hub. Then that dedicated funding for road and bridge operations, that's at 5 pennies I talked to you about. And then we're, in the interim, we're going to secure some real estate. We've already been securing real estate, if you didn't know. We own about half of that square on the east side now. We've been buying it in cash, and my goal is to continue to buy and secure agreements to buy in the future the rest of that real estate. Because once we decide we're ready to move forward with the courthouse, we want to have the real estate locked up. Mental health services is another big deal we're working on. I met with Commissioner Franklin this morning. He's helping me with this project to get an extended observation unit. The reason why this is important is because right now, when you pick up a mental health patient that's committing a minor crime, police officers are faced with an unenviable decision to either take them to the jail or take them to the emergency room. If they go to the ER, they're stuck there for many, many hours. If they take them to the jail, they can be back in the street quickly. The officer can't. But now you have a mental health patient that's in a jail and in a criminal proceeding when really they need a mental health treatment. That's what they need. And so we've got a lot of folks in our jail, and that's the same way across the state, because there's not a third alternative. This is the third alternative. You get them there, you get them cleared medically, the officer can get back to their job, and they can be in a safe, secure place for 24 to 48 hours while they get stabilized, and they don't have a criminal trespass charge against them just so they go to jail. Really important. We've got some transportation planning with the state and the city of Tyler to do as well. And then we need to renovate our low-risk facility to accommodate medium-risk folks. You know, they just finished that jail like 8 years ago, and that was before my tenure. But because of COVID, we're completely full. And we got about 60 people out of the county right now in other people's jails because we have more than 1,100 inmates in our jail. So we've got to start planning now for what's the next jail plan. Even if that's 10 or 15 years down the road, how are we going to do the next jail expansion? And when are we going to do that? Because we have to have a long-term view of our facilities planning. It's unfortunate that COVID did that to us because we've got 666 as of last week pretrial felonies. That means people that have been charged with felonies that have not had their day in court yet. That's not good for them, not good for us. We're hoping to get that going now that we can get more jury trials going, but it's going to take a while to get out of that backlog. It's going to take a while. Which is part of that, and just for clarity, that says the criminal courts in the backlog. We're working on that as well. Commissioner Franklin and I, we had some ideas that we're talking with judges about and hoping that we can help them out through that process. All right, now let's talk about the courthouse. What time is it today?
It's 12:43, but you
All
got
right.
plenty of time.
Good amount of time to deal with the courthouse. I do want to tell you where we're at with the courthouse because this is going to come back up, and we have got a great plan. Fitzpatrick Architects, Randy Ziegler put together a really great team and put together a fantastic plan that revolves around safety and security for those involved in law and order in Smith County, as well as logistics for how the judiciary works here in Smith County, and long-term planning to make sure that we don't repeat the mistake of 1952 and build a courthouse that once you build it, you've already outgrown it. That courthouse that you see on the right is built for 2 trial courtrooms. That's it, 2 trial courtrooms. You know how many are in there right now? 8. There's 8 courtrooms in that facility right now. That's just not appropriate. We got a district court that's in the old law library. I mean, that's crazy. The jury can't even see folks. You got a second floor where jurors, witnesses, victims families, witnesses' families, criminal defendants families are all intermingling in very, very small, narrow passageways, all using the same common restroom. Judges have to go through those same hallways as well. It is not a safe place to be. Juries oftentimes overhear the witnesses and the defendants and the families all out there because they've got to traverse certain spaces between the courtroom and their jury deliberation room. The jury deliberation room for a couple of the courtrooms is so small that we couldn't even buy regular sized chairs. We had to buy small sized chairs so that we could get them in the room, enough people in the room. I mean, it's not appropriate for, if you think that there's something significant going on in that courthouse, then the building should reflect that. Now we can do it dirt cheap. You go find an old Walmart to go in and revamp an old Walmart. Here's the analogy I give people though, is when you go to church, something really special, really significant happens in church. A lot of lives get transformed and changed and addressed in church. The building should reflect that. And that's why I think churches look nice. I mean, look at this. This is a beautiful, the renovation that this church was able to do a few years ago, gorgeous. Why? It reflects the value of what actually happens in this facility, right? When you walk into a courthouse, same thing should happen. You should stand up straighter, you should talk better, you should dress better. You should be at your very, very best. But if you walk into a facility that looks like the facility we have now, and you're completely uncomfortable because the air conditioning in the central jury room doesn't work, and you're having to share that restroom with somebody that maybe was the offender's family in a crime that you're with, and you're standing there and you're right next to them, that can be really uncomfortable and inappropriate. We really shouldn't have that. So let me go through how a real courthouse should happen. Plus, besides all that, it's really an old building, and in order for us to use it long term, we're going to have to do some significant renovations internally. We're still going to be left with those problems, even with the renovation, even if you did that. You can't renovate it to solve those safety and security issues. You need to redo the bones building just like you would an old car. You'd have to rebuild the engine or something like that. We've got to do that with the mechanical, electrical, and plumbing systems because they're getting outdated. This is what the design for the new courthouse looks like. But I want to tell you about safety and security. So these 3 different colors you see on here, the north and the south end here is what I'm going to call them. That's the judges areas. The courtrooms you see in the middle, and then the light blue is the public. And it allows for the traverse of 3 different sets of groups of folks without crossing each other. This is the public. So they would come up those elevators and into the courtroom from the front. Then then the secured, which would come up between the courtrooms, that would be jailers and those that are in jail. They bring those folks up under detention into a secured area between the courtrooms. They come up that elevator from the garage and straight to a floor where they can enter the courtrooms from the side, never cross the public. And then judges, they come up a separate elevator, go back to their offices, and they're back in the office suite, and they enter that courtroom from the back. And that's how they get around without crossing paths throughout the day. So we're going to show you, I'm going to flip through a bunch of these and stack them now. These are the floors we have designed out for the courthouse. You see how the vertical flow that the public works from floor to floor. Same with the jail secured passageways, and then same with the judges and their staff. And they never cross from the bottom up or side to side. Oh, now here's let's go back. Here's the video I want to show you of the courthouse. And then we're going to take questions. And that's what we've come up with, Colleen.
So the discussion at the table while the video was on,
Yes.
where is it at? And
Oh.
does it close Broadway down?
No, it doesn't close Broadway. In fact, it's the east side of the square. You can see all of our workshop drawings and meetings from last year. We worked through this process of where it would go. It would actually go on top of the east side of the square, so we'd shut down Sprint Street between Irwin and Ferguson. And the old courthouse in that video is gone. So you basically have a lawn from what is now the New York store and all that stuff. All that whole block would be fire. What's that?
Where the fire was a few years back.
Yeah, where the fire was, where the vacant buildings is on the east side of the square, that whole block, all of it, would be gone in order to accommodate this. So you have the administration building, the courthouse, and the jail lined up on the east side of the square, yes.
Judge, will the district clerk's office still be in the courthouse?
Yes.
The county clerk's office will remain where it is?
The county clerk's office is scheduled to go over to the new courthouse. Yeah, so that you would have, we would likely leave land records in the bottom of the annex, but the rest of the county clerk's office would go, mainly because of weight issues, honestly.
Here's a question. Tyler, did you have a question?
You know, at the courthouse, the judge has special people called the city council.
Talking about the council judges that we're talking about?
City council, people who usually, they decide the person they say person is guilty or not.
Oh, yeah, yeah, so we're talking about the jury itself to decide the criminal cases, and this keeps them nice and secure. They actually are back where the judge's staff is, so they would exit a back door, the judge would have a door, they have a door, and then exit right back to their deliberation room back there. And you could not get to a court staff unless you went through the secure door, even from the side. So on that design, and for those lawyers that are really curious on the specifics, I can talk through the specifics afterwards and show you how it works going in the courtroom or right inside to the court's office. You have to get buzzed in to get back there. Yes, sir.
Do you have any idea of the cost of the project?
Yeah, it's $125 million, and it's about 2 pennies plus or minus a little bit depending on when we do it on the tax rate. Again, one of the reasons why we didn't do it during COVID, because $125 million for the courthouse plus another $15 million for a parking structure, $140 million total. For that project, if you wanted to do both those A and B components together. It's an expensive proposition, but it's not getting cheaper. We went back to the 2000 and 2007 study and proposals, and their costing is, if you do the present day values of those cost estimates back then, are actually more expensive than what we're doing here. So we're getting more value of the square footage. It's about 260,000 square feet. So it's a pretty big building, yes, sir.
In accordance is it designed to accommodate?
Yeah, it's designed to accommodate 12, and you can expand it really to 16 if you needed to, long way down the road. But it's enough for at least 75 years of logistical growth. Now the building will be around a whole lot longer than that. But you've got 3 floors stacked on each other, 4 courtrooms on each floor. And we would build out 10 immediately and leave 2 that are not built out. And we could build those 2 out when we needed them. Like I said, we have 8 now that we could use, but that gives us enough logistical growth based on our population for at least 75 years. Yes, sir. I'll come back to you.
It might have been on there, I just missed it. What, about Broadway? Broadway stayed where?
Broadway stays where it's at.
Okay.
Doesn't get cut off. We did a traffic study, and we looked at maybe putting the courthouse in the middle of the square, and that's our big, long conversation we can have about why we didn't do it, but there's a lot of reasons why we didn't do it, one of which is the size of the building. It's not like the old courthouse. The old courthouse was really small in the middle of that square, and so you still had a lot of green space, and you still felt like there was open space. But you put that building in the middle of the square, and you can't see anything. It takes up the whole square, so you really need it off to the side. Plus, we had some traffic issues related to that too, which just wasn't going to be a good idea. Jim?
Can we put it along to 3, the juvenile part still be located where it is?
Yes. Yeah. Unless that court ever wants to just do it differently. I mean, they've got a courtroom in the courthouse and that courtroom out there for juvenile stuff. But if they wanted to move all their stuff into the courthouse, they could, because every court, whether or not it's a district court or a county court law court, is built the same. And we did it for logistical growth reasons so that we could actually grow however we needed to, either adding district courts or adding county courts of law down the road, and they would all be the same. I'll be glad to stick around and answer a lot more questions about the courthouse. I want to finish by saying this. I really, truly love the opportunity to be your county judge. I really do. I value the fact that you have given me this opportunity, and I don't take it lightly. I really try to do the best we can for the community without making things ideological and political in nature, but really try to make sound, reasoned decisions. And if you don't think I'm doing that, come see me and we'll talk through things. Usually it's just misunderstanding about some facts. We'll get through it. Thank you guys. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Judge Moran. I want to wish, did Beth speak on? Okay, Beth left, but I was going to wish Beth and Chris good luck this week. They're going to be attending Lone Star Cats.
We need flow charts to figure out how to do this because it's all online and you got 5 million different Zoom links to follow and go to this elected and then go to this and all that stuff. But they're giving up their week every evening this week and all day Saturday for this, so I really appreciate them going through this training to get ready for next year and the year after. Are there any other announcements from the floor? All right, seeing none, Michael, would you mind leading us in the 4-way test?
The 4-way test of things we say and do. First,
Is it true?
second,
Is there at all concern?
third,
Will we build better friendships?
and fourth.
Will we benefit of all concerned?
Have a second. Good. Thank you. Good. Thank you, Diane.
Thank you very much.
John.
You got